Hi guys. Welcome to PCG Coffee Session. Let's see how many viewers we have. She said. Okay. I think people are joining. Okay, let's give it. Let me add Spanish. Hey guys, we'll be quickly starting in about a minute. So let's just give one more minute for other folks to join. Okay. We had about 120 plus registrations. So I think they'll join slowly. So we can start now. Thanks for joining the PCG coffee session, guys, and welcome to a PCG coffee session, Mr. Zeeshan Syed. Okay, what who we have here with us is Zeeshan Syed, who is the founder of Tech Talk for non-developers. He is a well-known name in LinkedIn circles, and he has trained many people, especially product managers, in understanding the basics of technical knowledge needed for building awesome products. So let's welcome him once again for the PCG coffee session, guys.
Thank you very much, Ravi. Looking forward to being here.
Thank you, Zishan. So before we start, let me give a quick introduction about Product Coffee Group. So I'm Ravishankar R. I'm the founder of Product Coffee Group. The reason why I started PCG, I'll give a quick story about it. Right, there is this huge craze in India for product management, and people are paying a lot of money to become a product manager. In one way, it is good, but I wanted people to really understand product management before they make that huge jump, right? So I started PCG to demystify product management so that people take the right decision before making the leap to become a product manager. Okay, so that is what PCG stands for, the vision and mission. So how does PCG do this is by conducting events, providing free mentorship, and producing a lot of product content, and we do everything for free, right? That is what PCG's mission. And so far we have mentored like for more than 500 plus sessions, more than 500 plus mentorship sessions, and more than 6 events, and countless number of product content we have released. So for more info about Product Coffee Group, you guys should go and visit www.productcoffeegroup.com. Okay, so let me show that in the banner as well. Okay, I think we can start. So, Sijan, the first question, right? Many people ask me, even during the mentorship session, okay, do you think product managers should have technical knowledge? If you think it is yes, then why?
Well, I mean, since my entire brand revolves around teaching tech to product managers, I would absolutely say yes. But even if I wasn't doing this for a living, my answer would still be yes. And the main reason is because I mean, like we all know that product managers wear multiple hats, and they're often expected to speak multiple languages. So, I often use the analogy of imagine you're, let's say, a tour guide in India that only spoke Hindi.
Hmm.
You may be effective at your job, but you may not be able to communicate with your group very well if your tour group only spoke English. But
Absolutely.
particularly when it comes to product management, I've personally witnessed product managers struggle to keep up, during meetings because they didn't understand the technical lingo, and that kind of stems from there. Kind of stems into them struggling to work with developers, and even giving a lot of like misinformation because of misunderstandings. Like I can think of like one or two scenarios where a product manager told one of the directors at a company that I was working at that an upcoming feature will be ready to test by the end of the week. But then when the director went on production, that feature wasn't even there. But as it turns out, the feature was ready to test on UAT, which is a different environment. And like those kinds of scenarios, they can often be avoided if people if the product manager had an understanding of different types of environments. I've had product managers test with test features with directors on, let's say, on one environment versus another. Um, and like some features are available on others when they're not available on others, and sometimes it can a lot of misunderstandings can happen as a result of that. So it's just always it's good to have that kind of that kind of understanding there. In other circumstances, I've had product managers tag every single developer in a Slack group because they didn't know who to go to when it came to a specific question that they had. And I can only imagine just how overwhelming it may be when you have a burning question, but there's about 30 people that you can go to ask it. And the unfortunate reality is that eventually, when you don't have technical knowledge as a product manager, it's quite sad, but it's unfortunately very true that your development team slowly but surely starts to lose some respect for you because you don't have enough respect for the industry to take the time to learn how things are built and how things run around when it comes to a product development team. So my answer would be yes, absolutely. Product managers should have some level of technical knowledge, which we'll definitely get into that very shortly.
Thanks, Ishan. Being a practicing PM at one of the large Indian B2C product companies, I can totally relate to that. And yes,
Yeah.
the next question, right? What level of technical knowledge? Let me put that in the banner. Right. So, what level of technical knowledge a product manager should possess to converse efficiently with developers?
Yeah. So I'll go back to my tour guide example, because like if you're, let's say, like a tour guide, you don't, and your group is mostly English speakers, you don't need to be a scholar in English or understand Shakespearean English in order to be effective at your job. So given that, I personally don't believe that product managers need to know how to code in order to be effective effective at their job and effective at communicating with developers. Because in my opinion, having technical literacy is very different than knowing how to code. And I've seen a lot of product managers go down this route where they take coding classes and that kind of stuff to try and become more tech savvy. But the unfortunate reality is that you're going to end up, unless you actually want to go and want to become a developer, I don't really recommend people becoming a developer or learning how to code, because it's very, very difficult. It's extremely difficult. And sometimes developers can spend 90% of their time just like debugging one problem, as opposed to, and then 10% of the time actually building a solution and learning something. So it can be very, very frustrating and a bit disheartening. But what I would suggest for product managers is to spend more time learning concepts that are not specific to just one language, because this will make you language and framework agnostic. And let's take REST, like a REST API, for example. You can make an API request in many different languages: Python, Ruby, Java, JavaScript, just to name a few. But instead of learning the syntax for using a REST API with all of these different languages, why not learn the important concepts that make up a REST API? Learn what a request is, learn what a response is, learn what a method is, what an endpoint is, what a status code is, because these are the things that make up a REST API, regardless of which language it's being made in. And you can learn the syntax for how to make a REST API, which is for how to make a REST API or make a REST API request, but in let's say Java. But if your development team chooses to change the language to Python, or perhaps you put on in a different team where they're using a different language, that knowledge may not really transfer over very well. But the concepts, if you understand the concepts, regardless of whether the technology changes, as a PM, it doesn't actually matter to you. And because like the concepts around REST APIs, they'll stay the same. They'll absolutely stay the same regardless of what your development team is using. And even if you do manage to learn these languages, the Ruby, Python, and Java and whatnot, no developer will ever expect you to know that. At least from my experience, even product managers who were former developers, for the most part, they don't write any code, and they really shouldn't be writing code, because that's my job. I'm a developer. I work with developers, and that's that's our job to do that. Like I've I personally am not. I guess I'm personally not a big fan of product managers learning. Learning how to code. 'Cause I just don't see it to be an effective use of time. But at the end of the day, when it comes to learning like I guess like learning like the concepts and whatnot, um, learning concepts is what will allow you to become a lot more technically literate, and this is something that will allow you to gain transferable skills, which eventually allows you to acquire, evaluate, and communicate technical information a lot more effectively, which I would say is far more powerful for product managers. And I mean, I'll kind of end off my answer with just some feedback that I recently got from one of my students who is enrolled in my course. So Zane, who's a product manager here in Toronto, she recently finished one of my modules on REST APIs. And keep in mind, she's not a developer. She's never written a line of code in her life. The very next day, she was on a call with her development team and the director of product at her company. And Zane was asking a bunch of questions for a status update on an API that was being built, and she didn't shy away from asking from asking technical questions and using technical jargon that she learned from my course. And by the end of it, she got the update that she needed. Everyone was on the same page, and the director, who was also on that call, was really impressed with the type of questions that she was asking and like the way that she was engaging with her developers. So it really just goes to show that you don't need to be a developer in order to effectively communicate with your development team. You just need to understand the concepts that the industry revolves around, because once you understand that, the sky's the limit. And regardless of where it is that you that your career takes you, if you're thrown into some sort of a new development team at a new company or even an existing company, whatever technology it is that your development team is using, it won't even matter to you. So that's that's my answer to that. Learn concepts, not code.
Great, Zeeshan. So you mentioned learn concept, right? So now the next question is like gathering technical knowledge is very difficult, especially for non-developers, right? And there are many concepts. Where to start? Like, what are the main concepts product managers should focus upon? This is a very dear question. Even it comes from me as well. So I'm looking forward to this.
Excuse me. Yeah, so I'm going to I'm going to start off by giving the answer that every product manager gives. It depends. It always depends on on the role. But I have taught I've taught almost 1,000 product managers in the past year and a half, and just through my course and through live sessions and whatnot. But so I've kind of broken it down to like a list of things that terminologies that I feel product managers who are especially beginners should really focus on, because these concepts, once you understand these concepts, you've kind of built the foundation for technical knowledge, and you can build on top of that. So the very first one will be client server relationships. Clients make a request for data to a server, and the server sends back a response to the client with that data. APIs is another big one. An API is an interface that a client will use to get data from the server. I can spend quite a bit of time talking about APIs, which I'm happy to later on if there's some time. Environments is definitely the third one. This is where a lot of misunderstandings happen. Code is on one environment versus another, but an environment is a sandbox that has all the things that your product needs in order to run. And your application is going to be running on many different environments depending on what stage it's in. So it's important to know what an environment is and what
Can
each
we
of
call
them
it
are.
as coding environment, Zeeshan? Like, how do I put this? Client server relationship is first, API second, then environments. Coding environment, is it? Like, how do I put this?
Yeah, coding environment. Coding environment is
right?
okay. Yeah.
Okay,
Or
sure.
rather, yeah, we normally the term that we often just use is environment, but you're welcome to be more specific there.
Okay.
Yeah, so those are some of them. The next one will probably be back end versus front end. Back end is the stuff that you don't see. Front end is the stuff that you do see. And when it comes to when a feature request comes in, or you're allocating resources for your team, it's important to know which developer does what, because you don't really want to overestimate how much work your team can take on. If you only have like 2 backend developers and 5 front end developers, and majority of the work that's coming in is API related, you want to actually be able to estimate how much time that's going to take appropriately. So we have back end versus front end. Databases is definitely a big one. Databases is where all of your your app data is stored. And databases for me, like whenever I'm trying to understand a system, I like to understand how the data is actually structured, because then everything once you understand how the data is structured, everything else kind of falls into place. So that's definitely a big one. Version control, being able to isolate code, understanding how code is isolated until it's ready for use, and how teams collaborate together. Um, Knowing like the different types of I guess like understanding where what a branch is, what merging is, like the most common terms that developers use when it comes to version control. Git versus GitHub, that's definitely important. So I think that actually covers the ones I really wanted to cover. So I can go over those again. Client server relationships, APIs, environments, backend versus front end, databases, and version control. Those are the most important one. And I know I kind of skimmed over it very very quickly, but I do cover this stuff in a lot of my posts. So for those of you who are listening and who haven't already followed me, consider following me. I'm and I always ask for feedback regarding whatever content is that people want to learn about. But these are, in my opinion, the ones that will help you really build a foundation and kind of have you set for life as far as your career in tech is concerned as a product manager.
Okay, that's great to share, Zeeshan. I think I've put that in the subtitles as well. Right. Okay,
Right.
it's great. We know the concepts, right? So now the next question is like, how do you go about learning? Even just hearing these concepts, many people will be like trembling with fear, like understanding. It's a little bit what is it? It's difficult for people to even understand. Okay, these are big terms. How do I go about learning these technical concepts? If this is the question, how would you answer?
Yeah. So, I was actually having a conversation with a product manager about a few months ago, and they told me how a product manager often has to speak to multiple personas. And to be specific, there were five personas that they mentioned to me. An eighth grader, a drunk person, your grandmother, an investor whose time and attention you only have for 30 seconds, and an engineer. So those are like the five that one of these product managers was mentioning to me, and I kind of took that and ran with that and said, you know what, it probably makes sense to start with, let's say, to gain knowledge, to gain like the understanding of that an eighth grader would have, and then kind of move down the list until you eventually get to, let's say, an engineer. So I mean, an eighth grader. I mean, maybe a drunk person. I don't know. I don't know if you want to learn it on that level. But explaining something to an eighth grader, explaining something to your grandmother, explaining something quickly to the point where you can explain to an investor that has whose attention you have for 30 seconds, and then build on top of those incrementally, and then when we finally get to, let's say, the engineer, the engineer that you're speaking with, and at that point in time is when you can have a lot more technical jargon and lingo, and if you can explain it in a way that makes sense to, let's say, a REST API. If you can explain something like that to an engineer, then I would say that's probably you've probably done very well for yourself there. So it's a very I guess it's a very like a linear way of learning, and I often do this when it comes to my content, and even when it comes to my course. I like to start off somewhat general, and then build on top of that and throw all kinds of jargon at the very end, and just give some like some real world examples as well. Having people understand like trade-offs between one technology and another, and that can only happen when you actually understand how two varying technologies work. So that would probably be my that would be my answer there on how you can approach the learning.
Okay. You're saying start at a very generic way and then try to go deeper. That would be your answer, right? So
Yeah.
so okay, I think the next question is kind of related to the previous question. Okay, so now I'm going to combine these two things. You have to learn those technical concepts, right? But how would you start? How would you start doing this? Yes, it is. You have to do it in a generic way. But for a non-developer, it's a sea out there. It's a big ocean out there. Like if you go and search for API, there are multiple definitions that comes up. So how would you even know where to start? Do you have any resources or in a structured manner? Any recommendation that you can give for learning all these concepts?
Well, I mean, not to toot my own horn, but I would say follow my content. I haven't really found a whole lot of like free resources that I think are really that effective. There are some folks out there who are also doing something similar to what I'm doing, but my approach to learning has always been very visual. I am absolutely a visual learner. I make no apology for that. I don't necessarily like. I mean, there are some folks who have written books and who have like me even do podcasts, and that's great. I mean, if that works for them and their audience, but I'm a very visual person. Even when I first started learning how to code, my approach to learning was actually exactly what I just said. I started generic, and then I started building on top of that, and until I was able to write the code to get this to get my whatever I wanted up and running. So I would I like taking things from a very visual approach. I would definitely recommend some folks following my content and seeing if that works for them. The unfortunate reality is that I've kind of found, excuse me, I've found that there really is no like technical manual out there that companies offer, especially when it comes to new product managers and new people in tech. The the truth is that many companies expect you to quote unquote learn on the job and hit the ground running when you get there, which I just think is idiotic. If you're somebody who is if you come from, let's say, like a background, a non-technical background, like perhaps you're a teacher, you're great at communicating, but you may not necessarily have that. You have all the skills that are required of a product manager. Like allocating resources, communication, staying calm in high stress situations. But if you lack that technical knowledge, sometimes companies overlook you, and even if they don't overlook you, they expect you just to learn on the job or just expect to learn from developers. Which I may work for some folks, but I haven't seen it work for very many. A developer that you're working with doesn't always have the time and resources and even the knowledge to be able to explain this stuff in a way that will make sense for you. But yeah, that's more or less why I started what I'm doing. I do believe that technical knowledge should be available to everyone from every walk of life. So I try to give out as much free information as it possibly can. But yeah, and my approach is very simple, where I explain a concept on a high level, and then afterwards I give a sort of an example as to how that can be implemented. So yeah, that's my answer to that.
Great, Jason. I've been following you on LinkedIn, and all those carousels that you put in LinkedIn like are in a very simple manner. It's very easy to understand as well. So people who are like watching and people who are like followers of PCG, please do follow Zeeshan as well. He has a very good quality content out there. So, and apart from this, I want to take this occasion to say that even Product Coffee Group is compiling all the resources as well. If you are a newbie, you want to get into product management, where should you start, where should you end, including the technical concepts, right? So we're compiling a lot of resources, so we'll be releasing it this week, so please stay tuned. And this video will also be part of that resource. We'll be embedding it in the website, so please stay tuned. Okay. Now to the last, but penultimate question, I would say. Can you explain? I know API. You have put a lot of question, resources for API. Can you explain API, application programming interface, in simple terms? To our viewers.
Yeah. So I usually use a lot of visuals for this, but I'm going to do my best to explain this in using just words and an analogy that I often use. So firstly, API stands for Application Programming Interface, which means nothing to most people. Okay, it means nothing to most people. But the key word to remember in API is the last word, interface. Okay, interface. That is the key word, interface. So an API tells one developer how to use another developer's code. Okay, so let's just use like a simple analogy. Imagine you had your television and then you had your TV remote. Okay, when you try to work your TV, you can only do, as the user, you can only do what your remote allows you to do. So when you press the button, the power button on your TV, a signal is sent to when you press the power button on your remote, a signal is sent to the television, and a bunch of things happen in the background and then your TV just magically turns on. So here's the $1,000,000 question that I often ask: yes or no? Can you explain to me how the science behind a TV, the science behind how a TV actually turns on? Most people would say no, because most people don't understand positive ions and electrons, and they can't explain like how a TV actually turns on. And that's perfectly fine, because the remote control not only tells you what you can do to the TV, but it also hides the complexity by giving you a nice and simple interface. Okay, a nice and simple interface to utilize. Remember that key word, interface. Whatever your remote control allows you to do, that's what you can do to the television. Let's tie this to, let's say, in your application. So your application using the Stripe API. So in this analogy, we have the television, we have the remote control, and we have the user. Your application would be the person. Your application will be like the person using the remote control. So your application is the person using the remote control, because they're the ones who are making the request to turn on the TV. The TV itself would be the Stripe API. That's what you want to get. That's what you want to use at the end of the day. And the API that Stripe provides, that is the remote control. The API on the remote control on the television tells you what you can do. The API for Stripe tells the developer what their application can do as they make use of Stripe's code. So if, let's say, some sort of functionality on your remote, let's say like the power button, let's say that power button was not actually on the remote, would you be able to turn on the television? No, you wouldn't be able to. I'm assuming that there's no buttons on the TV, but in the remote's the only way. You would not be able to turn on the TV. If your application, if it wants to make use of the Stripe API, it can only do what the interface, what the application programming interface allows for them to do. That interface is the API that Stripe has provided.
Okay, I think it is a
That's what that's
very simple explanation. Most people will give this restaurant example where there is a, you're eating in the restaurant and there is a waiter who goes, back and forth between the kitchen and the restaurant. Sorry, the eating area. So the waiter is the API, that who will bring the food back and forth. That is the example. It's refreshing to hear something different, Zishan, and it's very apt. No, thank you for that. Okay, I think we are at the very end. So we can open the question and answer session. I think, guys, if you have any questions, you can ask. People are asking, can they ask questions via chat? Yes, please do. Okay, there seems to be some issue, like they are not able to post the questions.
are you able to post questions on the LinkedIn event page? Perhaps we can use that.
LinkedIn web pages. Let me just quickly check that. I have a chat is disabled. Actually, I have not disabled chat. Just a sec. Let's ask here. Okay. I think we have a group, right? People are not able to ask questions. That's why uh, I'm opening a group here. Let's ask your questions here. Okay, we should be getting questions any minute. Just a sec. I think the first question is from Karthik. He's just typing. Let's. I think the first question is from Varun Azishan. He's asking
Yeah,
how to
sure.
tackle the technical questions in a PM interview coming from a product designer background,
How to
especially like
tackle the
UI UX person, he wants to attend a PM interview. How to handle the technical questions?
Well, I would probably start off by I would probably start off by checking to see what is a common list of technical questions that PMs are often asked, because this is very similar to how developers tackle technical questions. I mean, there's an abundance of different questions that can be asked, but knowing what are the most common ones, that would probably be a good start. And ensuring that you have like a solid like the foundations kind of built, and as far as your technical knowledge is concerned. I mean, I did give a list of four or five different things that I think every product manager should actually understand. That would probably be how I would suggest, like, two pieces of advice I think people should start with. One being know what the most common questions that are going to be asked, and and prep for them. There are some resources, I believe, on actually there are some resources on YouTube that do like mock interviews for product managers. So definitely start there. And secondly, ensure that you have like those fundamentals that I mentioned down pat. Because then from there you can build you can build your knowledge on top of that. Sometimes I have seen I have seen a couple of questions where especially for the more technical roles, they can be like for like API product managers, they can be a bit more they can be a bit more involved, which is where perhaps like you have to I guess like learn a bit more and just know that the jargon, the lingo, the technical lingo a bit more, which is where again, like folks like myself and a few others come in. So that would be my advice there.
Okay, okay, okay. Varun, did you get that? Do you have any other follow-up questions, Varun? I think no more follow-up questions. I think he's typing. Let's wait. We have two more questions as well. I think Varun doesn't have any follow-up questions. Okay, thank you, Zishan, for that. The next question is from Karthik. So, as a PM, what is the right level of technical information should we give or not give to our stakeholders? Taking the five personas you mentioned earlier as a reference, from eighth grader to an engineer. So, what is the right level of technical information should we give or not give to our stakeholders?
Well, I mean, I guess it really would depend on the circumstance, but I would say you probably don't need to when it comes to explaining something to your stakeholders, you certainly don't need to explain it on the way that you would maybe in the way that you would have a conversation with with your engineers, because the unfortunate reality is that most stakeholders, like the chief product officers, the director of product management, they've never been developers, and they haven't written a line of code in their life, or perhaps they haven't written code for a long time. Um, I would probably suggest phrasing giving your answers in a way that, like, preparing your answers, but giving them in a way that would satisfy whatever it is that they're looking for. So for instance, I did make a post. One of my more popular posts was on comparing, excuse me, REST APIs versus GraphQL APIs. So what I did was I explained some of the trade-offs in REST APIs versus GraphQL APIs, and that was the concept of overfetching data and underfetching data. So when a client makes a request for some data, the problem with REST APIs is sometimes you get too much data, or sometimes you get too little data. In both situations, there can be I guess like some issues that arise there. GraphQL more or less solves that problem by creating what are known as schemas. So just, I mean, with you just being able to explain, I guess on that level, that what you're giving that information to your stakeholder, in a way that makes sense for them. Like, they're not always looking for all the technical jargon and all that sort of lingo, like response, request, method, that kind of stuff. They're not JSON. They're not looking for that kind of stuff. They just want to know what's going to keep the ship afloat, and what's going to it's going to help their business. So that's how I'll probably phrase that phrase and answer there. If in the situation where your developers came to you and said, we want to switch over from from some stuff over from REST APIs to GraphQL, presented in a way that is appealing to your stakeholder. And the only way to do that is to, again, understand trade-offs and understand the concepts behind and the problems that GraphQL actually solves. So that would be my my answer there.
Okay, Zishan. We have more comment, questions coming up. I just realized that I have, set this session for kids only, less than 18. That is why the comments were
Oh,
disabled. I
oh,
just turned that down. I think people should be able to comment directly in YouTube, guys. So really sorry for
nice.
that. We have three more questions. We'll start. Okay. See, Karthik, there is a follow-up question from Karthik. As we move along the PM roadmap, right, like the career roadmap from APM to Chief Product Officer, he's asking, should we distance ourselves from tech? This is a
Um,
philosophical question.
I don't know if I'm really the best person to answer that because, like I said, I'm not a product manager, but I would say that having depending on the role that you're in and developers that you work with, it can certainly help if you have some degree of technical knowledge. And let me give you a very very specific example. So one of my good friends, his name is Brad Menezes. He actually started a company called Superblocks, and Superblocks is basically a company that has that allows you to build allows you to build it allows developers to build internal tools, and by making use of various different APIs and building those tools in a very cost efficient and quick way. His product, although Brad is not necessarily a developer, he has a lot of technical knowledge, and he does have a lot of knowledge on APIs, and that's why he was able to work with his work very well with his developers and his chief technical officer. So I would say in the beginning stages, it definitely did help him to understand the problem that developers were actually facing and being able to understand how to solve it using technology. At this point, the company has raised I think over $40 million. So I don't know how much involved he is really with his development team, because the team is almost 50 people, I think, or something like that. So I would say that it can certainly help given in some points, but if you are if your role as a director or as a chief product officer certainly does not involve even working with developers, then maybe maybe you will distance yourself a little bit. But I think even for stakeholders, I really do wish that some more stakeholders would understand. And when I say stakeholders, I mean the chief product officers, the directors of product. I really wish even the co-founders are really. I would think that I would say that they really should understand technical. They should really have some degree of technical literacy. It would certainly save a lot of frustration and on our part, and allow them to empathize a lot more. But if your job if you're view as a director or a CPO is to empathize with your development team, which I think everyone should, then yeah, having some degree of technical knowledge would actually be very helpful there. So that is certainly an important thing to consider.
Thanks, Ishan. I'll put in my views as well, because I work with the CXOs and VPs of product, right? So as you grow in your career from APM to CPO, you should not distance yourself from tech. I think in terms of requirements, yes, you can distance, but your interaction with tech should be even more better, I would say, because product team will have their own perspective, and the technical team will bring in a totally different perspective that will make the feature even better, that will make the product even better. And most of the team, there is a tussle between tech team and product, right? Product doesn't report to tech doesn't report to product. So it is really really important that as you move up in your career, you should be more, you should interact more with tech, have the best kind of rapport to build awesome products. That is what I would say.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'll
uh,
just add on to that by saying you can also understand trade-offs a lot more. Like if you're the
exactly.
visionary at that point, when you're at the director level, you can have the greatest vision in the world, but if it's not feasible to actually build on in any way, shape, or form, you may you may run into a lot of pushback, even if
Definitely.
you are at that director level. So it's a great point there,
Definitely.
Ravi.
Great, great, Sishan. We have many questions in the chat, I think. Yeah, let me go to the next one. What is the difference between REST API and SOAP, SOAP API? I'm not sure whether I'm correct
Yeah,
spelling it
yes,
correctly.
it's referred to as SOAP. I did see that questions, and unfortunately, I don't think I can really answer that effectively right now. But I am happy to, Amar, if you want me to, I can create a post on that compares REST versus SOAP. Uh, the problem is like I have to actually put some thought into how I explain this kind of stuff, and that's the nature
Okay,
of what I do. Unfortunately, I can't always explain all the technical jargon right away. I have to kind of come up with like some analogies and some ways to make sure it actually makes sense. But I
exactly.
can, if you're open to it, I can absolutely make a post on that, and hopefully, hopefully you can gain you can get some value out of that. But thank you for that suggestion.
Great, Zishan. I think we can have a good session on small post about REST versus SOAP API in LinkedIn. That'll be helpful to many people. But I'm not sure whether they ask these kinds of questions in a technical interview for product manager. But I mean, it's fine. I think
You
Zeeshan will
know
still
what?
answer that. Yeah.
You know what? I actually do want to touch on that a little bit because I do feel like just because something isn't mentioned in the interview doesn't mean it's not going to be mentioned. You're not going to come across it in the job. And
Yeah.
as a developer, I often face this problem. Excuse me. Like I'm asked sometimes as a developer, I'm asked questions during an interview that I'm never going to come across in the real world. Like for instance, reversing a linked list. Like no one, I've never reversed a linked list in my entire life on the job. But like what the point that I'm trying to make is that some people like Amr for instance, it's always great to see people product managers have like this kind of fascination and curiosity, because even though someone in a job interview, you may not be asked the difference between REST and GraphQL, at some point in time your developers are going to be like, hey, Amr, we need to like we want to switch over to GraphQL. It's like it's great, it'll really solve a lot of problems. Then you have to say, okay, why, and understand the trade-off. So I do appreciate the curiosity there. I mean, I don't know exactly why you need to know the difference between REST and SOAP, but I do appreciate the curiosity. So always keep the curiosity coming. That's something I always encourage people to do.
Okay. Great, great, Zeeshan. We'll go to the next question. It is from, I'm not able to pronounce the name because it's not given. But the question is, I'm currently a Scrum Master for a API management team. So what if I wish to become an API product manager? So where should I focus on first, and what should be my vision? He wants to be an API product manager. He is asking for a roadmap.
Well, understand what an API is. So that'll probably be my first my first response to that. I would probably suggest like doing a deeper dive into APIs in comparison to other product roles, because the API product manager role is, from what I've seen, very very technical. And like there's going to be a lot of jargon that's thrown around that, because you're going to be working. Honestly, we'll be working only with backend developers. We'll be working with a lot of backend developers and a lot of infrastructure, more backend developers. So there'll be a lot of infrastructure stuff as well there. Um, so I would suggest perhaps doing a deeper dive on APIs. I did actually, I think it was a couple weeks ago. I did actually do like an 8 post long series on APIs, on REST APIs. So start there, and just kind of see where your knowledge takes you, and feel free to reach out if there's anything that I can do to help.
Thanks, Ishan. Adding on to that, recently PCG has released an article on technical versus non-technical technical product manager as well. API technical product manager, it's a very very niche role. You won't find that in many companies, right? So first you have to
Mm.
understand that difference. Of, what are all the skill sets that are needed to become a technical PM and a non-technical PM. Maybe that will help you in defining your vision on how to move towards an API product manager. So I've pasted
Yeah.
the link in the comments. You can check that out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes, Ishan.
and I was just gonna say, like, if once you understand like REST APIs, I would then jump into learning about system design, because, like I said, there is likely going to be there may be some backend developer, sorry, some infrastructure developers that you have to actually work with there, and just having an understanding of how the system is actually designed on a whole, that can certainly help. So APIs, system design, and as well as databases. Those are probably the three that I just kind of thought of off the top of my head. So APIs, databases, system design. Do those if you want to learn more about APIs.
Great. Thanks, Ishan. I think now it'll be even more clearer, I guess. Thank you. So let's go to the next question. Okay. Yeah. Again, it is from the same person. The question is like, what is a platform product manager according to you? I guess he's talking about technical product manager. All right. So how would you define a platform product manager? And have you ever worked with guys like that?
I haven't actually worked with one, so maybe Ravi, you can actually answer that question better than I can, and perhaps I can jump in if I do see if there's places for me to do that.
Yeah. See, so guys, when we say platform, right, it is very specific to a particular product or a particular company. There is no single definition. It's basically technical product manager. So the people who become platform product managers, right, they have a particular niche domain. For example, it could be payments, right? A technical product manager for payments in companies like Razorpay, Visa, Mastercard. You need to understand not just the functional aspect about the financial stuff and all. You need to understand about how the money gets moved, right? From the
Hmm.
payments perspective as well. From the technical perspective, you should really understand that. So that is the gist of it, because there is no one particular answer which will tell you exactly about who is a platform product manager. And most probably people who have this designation, they come from in a strong they have a strong expertise in core engineering. They are
Hmm.
developers first. Very rarely you'll find a business b school guy or a a non-technical pm moving into this role. Right, so
Interesting.
that is my small gist about platform product manager. I think Zishan, if you
Hmm.
can add, that will be great.
Well, I mean, yeah, I actually learned some new stuff there, which is actually kind of cool because so if I do decide to become a product manager, maybe a platform product manager is the one that I'll end up becoming, and then
Yeah,
and I can answer that question there. But that was great. I mean, it seems to me that the general gist is that you have to not only have domain knowledge, meaning like knowledge of the industry, but also combine that with technical knowledge, which I guess can be extreme technical knowledge, which I guess can be very
exactly.
it can be pretty intimidating. Yeah, that was definitely something new that I learned there.
Great. We'll go to the next question. Again, I think Amit is asking, how can I learn about API and what would be the roadmap for this? We already asked this question.
So 2 weeks ago. So when did I post that? I think I posted on February 9th. So February 20th is when I when I did a series on REST APIs. So if you want to go through my posts and just look for February 20th and beyond, you'll find that I actually break down what is an API, what is a REST API, like what is the response, what is the request, status code, methods. I basically break it all down for you over a period of I think like 7 or 8 posts. I can't remember. If you do want to learn more about it, then I would suggest enrolling in my course because I do go into a lot of detail, and I actually we designed some APIs. We designed an API for a social media application, and there's more content I'm going to be adding exclusively for my course as well. So to answer your question, I would start off with my content. If you like that and you want to learn more, then jump into my course, and
Hmm.
from there we can you can see if that works for you.
Great, great, Zishan. Okay, I think we have more questions. Now they are straight away asking it in the comments. So let's go there. So, what are Swaminathan Ganesh is asking? What are the best ways to understand the complex, high-level system architecture of complex products? For example, orchestrators, pipelines, indexing, data lakes. What is the best way to understand these system architecture?
The best way to understand these system architectures, I would say, it's still I would still go back to my linear way of learning approach. Maybe not necessarily explaining it to those different personas, but I would still take a linear approach to it. Um, all systems have, let's say, like load balancers. They have CDNs. They have different forms of caching. So I would start off by understanding what those terminologies mean, and from there, kind of building your knowledge on and from there building your knowledge on how they all come together. Um, Data. So I did mention about databases earlier. Databases is also a big thing. I think it's to some extent a little bit underlooked when it comes to system design, because when you think system design, you don't always think data. But I do think that understanding how your database is structured kind of does set the foundation for how the rest of your application will look. Because depending on how much data you're actually going to be saving, will determine how much, I guess, like how many requests are going to be made, and that will kind of determine how much load your whole system will actually be required to take. So that's certainly a good a good approach to start off with databases, and then from there you can go into APIs, because the APIs is what's going to determine what data is saved. But then also go into load balancers, CDNs, different forms of caching, and just trying to understand how like all the pieces come together. I mean, I know I have mentioned my content many times, but I do provide some examples on all this sorts of stuff, including system design as well, in my course. But you're welcome to also take a look at. Once you have those foundations, you can also understand. You can also go onto YouTube and just look up, like Netflix system design or Tinder system design, and just see how all that stuff is coming together. And when you understand those basics, then I guess like when it comes to specific questions like regarding pipelines, indexing, and data lakes, then you can probably then you can get those questions answered.
Okay. Thank you, Zeeshan. I think the last question is, I think it was addressed to me. What are the major tasks of a PM? Okay.
Yeah, you answer
Okay.
that, Ravi. I can't answer that.
See, there are many. There are actually articles that we have written in PCG. I'll share that as well. Right. Again, it depends whether it is a technical product manager and non-technical product manager. Right. If you have to simply put it, the job of a PM is responsible for the success of a product. Right. Whatever you need to do get those things done, that should be the task of a PM. The first thing that I would say is analysis, right? Before you even build the product or any feature, you have to understand the context. Why are you building it, right? Do you have any, is there a compelling need to build that product first of all, or is it your upper top management is asking you to build? So you need to go look at the data and analyze stuff. You look at the competitors, and then you figure out, okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is why I'm building it. Okay, and then the next step is like, how should your feature or your product be? Right, after analysis, you gather a lot of insights. Okay, you come up with an MVP, minimum viable product. Before, again, there are many thoughts here, right? In some companies, they will directly go and build, and then they will track the analytics and then figure, okay, this feature is actually solving the problem or not. In certain really big companies, there are MVPs, minimum viable product. You test out your particular feature to a small set of users. You track the metrics, whether it is really solving the problem or not. If you're, let's say, you want to increase the conversion rate of people going from landing page to your listing page in your product, right? So there is a lot of bounce happening in the home page, right? Around 60%, 50%. You want to reduce that, or you want to move more users into listing page. So you come up with the feature, right? You track these metrics, whether the feature that you came up with is improving or not. All right. So that is like using MVP. You do that, and the next step would be to I just bypass a lot of things. Right, when you implement a feature, you need to write the specifications, PRT, and then you need to liaise with a lot of teams in your company, tech team, product team, business stakeholders. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
everything that is responsible for the success of a product, right? That is the task of a PM. And technical PMs, their interaction with technical teams will be even more compared to the customers. They are not primarily customer facing, but a non-technical PM will be a customer facing PM. Okay, I hope I have answered you. I'll also share you a link, okay, where I go in detail about the tasks of a PM. Okay, Atul, I think we are nearing the end of the session. It's 8:53. Do we have any other question, guys? I think we can probably take one or two questions from Zeeshan. I don't think anyone is chatting. I think it's okay. Then let's wrap it up. Okay, Zishan, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for taking time to enlighten the product enthusiasts for PCG, and we really hope that people benefited from your wisdom and your inputs, and I really hope that I want to we collaborate more in future to help the product community. Okay, thanks a lot, Zishan. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. It was a
Big thumbs
pleasure,
up.
and look forward to collaborating again.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Take care,
Thanks
everyone.
thanks for joining.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Have a good night.